Good morning, everyone. It is 6 a.m. and we are getting started with our series, But First, Plants. And this morning, before I get started, A, thank you for joining me, and B, if you are catching this on the replay, just go ahead and hashtag replay for me. Because, hey, Liz, this helps folks who perhaps haven't seen this catch it on their feed. So, because Facebook is all about comments. Anyway, so thank you guys for joining me. We'll actually be looking at a very well-known plant this morning, lavender. Because who hasn't heard of lavender, right? And, you know, some of the things that it's good for, because it's in everything. I mean, lavender soaps, lavender this, lavender that, lavender smelling salts, lavender's everywhere. So I wanted to go ahead and look at some of the history of lavender first, because it is fascinating. And, hey, Diana. So let's go, replay. Let's go ahead and look into it. So lavender has been used for at least the last 2,000 years, which is pretty interesting in and of itself. It was used back by the ancient Egyptians. Sorry, I'm reading my notes here. As they used it in part of their mummification and for process and for purifying skin. So lavender and skin is nothing new. It's actually quite old. In fact, the Romans, back during the Roman era, used lavender both in cooking and in their bath water. So lavender baths are nothing new, and cooking with lavender is, again, nothing new. That's all throughout history. Now, this I thought was really, really interesting. Apparently, lavender became incredibly popular in the Victorian era because Queen Victoria adored lavender. In fact, she was so fond of it that she used it pretty much for everything. So she had lavender strewn throughout her castle, and to the point where it was all over the floors. So anytime anyone walked, the smell of lavender would just be released into the air. And of course, since the queen sets the trends, all of her court had to have lavender as well, because the queen herself was so fond of it. And this is where commercial lavender farming actually got its start, because lavender was so popular with the queen and the court that just gathering wild lavender wasn't enough to keep up with the demand. So this is where commercial lavender farming actually got its start, was in the Victorian era, because of Queen Victoria and her court demanding so much lavender. And this is also where the scent of lavender became associated with cleanliness and purity, because it was all there, like I said, constantly. I remember the first time I smelled this bottle of lavender oil, it just smelled like soap. Because that scent of lavender is so ingrained in things like soap, even in our modern times, that to me personally, when I opened that bottle, it just smelled like soap. I'm like, okay, lavender apparently just smells like soap, because we use it so much. Now, this I did not know, and I thought was fascinating. But apparently during World War I, when soldiers were wounded, what they would do was, when they were dressing the wounds, they would put lavender in the wounds, or on top, to facilitate cleanliness of the wounds and help promote healing. So I thought that was fascinating. I didn't know that. But of course, lavender is very noted for its calming and relaxing scent, which is what we all associate lavender with. Now, this was really interesting. Apparently, there was a French scientist named René Gatafos, forgive me, I don't read French very well. He was the first to discover that or rediscover, not sure, how helpful lavender can be with burns. Because apparently there was a lab accident where he was severely burned, and in his quick thinking there was a vat of lavender oil there, and he just plunged his arm, I believe what was burnt, into the lavender oil. And he found that because he did that, there was no scarring, and his burns healed much faster than they would have otherwise. So fascinating stuff. So that is kind of the history of lavender. Now, do note, hang on, I got a mom for just a second. Buddy, it's still night time. You need to go back to bed. Go back to bed, son. Close the door. Okay, sorry about that. So, note that true lavender, which is often adulterated with hybrid lavender, it's called lavandin, or synthetic linalool and linyl acetate, or synthetic fragrance chemicals like ethyl vanillin. So finding true lavender is actually tough because lavender is so dadgum popular. There is no way all of the lavender grown in the world can keep up with all of the demand for lavender. So a lot of the lavender out there is not real lavender, which is why when you see lavender scented everything, check the back of the label, and if it says fragrance, for sure it is not real lavender. But even a lot of the things that say lavender, it's more often than not, if it has real lavender in it, it also has lavandin. And while lavandin does have some of the same properties as lavender, it doesn't have completely the same because it's a hybrid. So be very careful when you're choosing your lavender. As always, I recommend Young Living because I know it's real lavender. Also, I read not too long ago, and this surprised the heck out of me, that most lavender, even if it's true lavender, is the plants themselves come from cloned seeds, which is interesting because think about it this way. When God creates, he creates variety, right? He's created humanity, and all of us are individuals. We're all different. And when you clone a plant, genetically, they're all the same. So if, say, take a carrot, and everybody knows carrots have beta carotene in it, right? Which is great for your eyes. So if I take a cloned carrot and I'm harvesting it for its beta carotene, all of my plants are going to have the exact same amount of beta carotene, right? Whether it's high or low, it's all going to be exactly the same. There's no law of averages there. Whereas if I have a genetic variety of carrots, I'll have varying levels of beta carotene. And if this carrot is low, well, then this carrot's high, and we're going to have that law of averages. So Young Living does not use cloned seed. They use strictly naturally propagated plants. So, you know, the way God intended, which I like. But that was just when I did a little bit of research. I'm sure there's a lot more history to lavender, but I did a little bit, and that's what I found and wanted to share with you guys. Now, lavender does come in two different varieties. So we've got this nice purple label, and then this isn't a lavender bottle, but pretend it is because I just don't happen to have one. This white one. So the white one is labeled for internal use, and the colored label is labeled for external use, so topical and aromatic. but the oil inside is exactly the same lavender. So it it can be used however you need. I have used lavender in my cooking before, so I make these blueberry banana muffins that actually calls for lavender flowers. I don't have lavender flowers, but I do have lavender oil, and I'll sub that, and oh, they're so good. Or I've made lavender lemonade before, and that's really good. I keep a bottle of lavender in my kitchen because, quite frankly, there are times when I touch the hot stove or the hot oven and hot glass looks exactly like cold glass. And I've made that oopsie before, and I'll just put a little lavender on it and find it takes the sting out. Lavender is good for so much. Lavender baths are incredibly relaxing, especially after a hard day. Lavender is amazing for your skin, and we see that historically people have been using lavender in their baths forever, and lavender for their skin forever. So again, these are not new uses. But lavender is also one of my favorite, Liz. I use it a lot. In fact, it goes in my kiddos' diffuser every night to help them sleep well because it is incredibly relaxing. So thank you guys so much for joining me this morning and learning a little bit about the history of lavender. So if you have any fun tidbits to share, please put them in the comments. I'd love to read them. If you have any questions, go ahead and put those in too. I'll do my best to answer them, or at least point you to your own answer. And I will talk to you guys on Thursday as we look at a new plant. See you then. Bye.